Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and ladies and gentlemen, I don't like huffing the copium like some Game Freak fans do, but I think Game Freak fans in general are some of the easiest to please gamers in the entire world. You know, I've talked a lot of crap about games like Call of Duty, being the same every year, but even this year's Call of Duty has a lot of heart and soul put into it. I know some people would disagree, but I enjoyed it all the way around. There's a lot of yearly franchises like Madden even, okay? That madden the hell out of me because I wonder how people are down to pay for the same goddamn project file re-exported every goddamn year, okay? But then again, I remember that Game Freak fans exist. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to just start off by saying one thing. The Switch needs an update, okay? This thing was already outdated when it came out, and it already is severely outdated by 2022 standards. Now, I know there's a lot of people that say, but Muta, Game Freak, does not know how to optimize their games. Clearly, Pokemon Violet and Pokemon Scarlet run like dog shit because of bad optimization. It can't be the hardware's fault. Now, of course, you're absolutely right there. Game Freak and optimization are like oil and water. But let's be real here. Even other games like Witcher 3, which look like a Vaseline blur, Doom, a lot of big titles that run on the Switch run with severe compromises. Now, a lot of people bring up Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and it's one of the best examples ever, because Monolith Soft has really put their best trying to make a proper full-on role-playing game right there for the Nintendo Switch hardware. They've put their all out. But even if you play games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3, you'll notice the texture work is shoddier. Obviously, it's reaching the limits of what it can. The resolution is very, very fuzzy, especially when you hook it up to the big televisions and try to view it that way. Obviously, it's a game that's running on compromises. Breath of the Wild looks nice. How active is the open world? Again, might I add you. Most of the time, I'm just scrolling through empty fields. There's a reason for that. It's because the open world can't actually be as lively as you'd expect, simply because the Switch is very, very weak hardware. Obviously, these are things we get, we understand. But even then, a lot of Nintendo teams do push magic out, okay? Now, that's the thing about the first-party systems at Nintendo, okay? There are a lot of good first-party development teams. The team behind Breath of the Wild, jaw-dropping work. Xenoblade, jaw-dropping work. Splatoon, the fact that you can play that game competitively, and I swear to God it never drops below 60 frames per second, is impressive. But then you get Game Freak, where I swear to God, they have the most profitable IP under their belt. Pokemon as a franchise, last I checked, is one of the most valuable franchises in the world. Now, if I look at the best-selling video game franchises, some of them include Mario, but Pokemon is very much at the top. Last I heard, the Pokemon Company, Pokemon itself, was a near $100 billion franchise. Now, you think with all that money from merchandising and all of the shit that they have, from the TCG and everything, they would reinvest it a little bit into the mainline games that they constantly release every year. Now, it doesn't really seem that that's the case, because Pokemon Scarlet and Violet have just come out, and while I do like the games, like, I'm not the biggest Pokemon fan in the world, but I decided I'm going to give it a try simply because it's an open world game, seamless like you would expect. Like I always imagined console level Pokemon to be. This isn't the Game Boy Advance era anymore. This ain't the DS era, okay? We finally have the ability for 3 goddamn directions and an entire world to explore. You bet your ass I was lined up ready to play this game. And I did, and I played it for a few hours, and I've gotten through some of the gym leaders, some of the Titan sections. I've done a bit of the 3 story paths that you can do. And generally speaking, I do think the experience is cool. I like seeing Pokemon fly around. I like seeing Pokemon out in the open field. And, the game, while it is easy, also it is a children's game. I get it. I understand. If I expect Shin Megami Tensei 5 levels of difficulty, I'll play that game right there. But of course, one thing that cannot be excused are the technical problems of this game. So here we're going to look at some of the technical limitations. Now this is one of the most cherry-picked videos that I've found, but I think it's a pretty good example here. So for instance, this person right here is playing the game on a launch day Switch, completely handheld. And if you're actually looking at it, you don't have cataracts or anything, you'll see that the textures are having an issue loading in. The frame rate is definitely having an issue. There's just a lot of problems, especially related to loading. Now, of course, further analysis from not just me and various other people around there have been Pokemon fan sites, Pokemon fan groups that have actually analyzed this and pretty much found out that the game has some severe technical issues. And this is beyond just the day one patch. Everyone's been playing right now with the day one patch. Day one patch has been out for days at this point, okay? Think of it like a day -7 patch. We've had this patch. Some people have played with just this patch. Now, according to this patch, ladies and gentlemen, even it has not addressed a possible memory leak issue when you enter any of the cities in the game. Now, one of the cool things about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is, like, while it has cities, not every building is obviously explorable because that would require some actual development time at Game Freak, but the cities definitely have their own vibe to them. There's NPCs walking around, and so on and so forth, okay? But every time you enter one of these areas or you look around the map, it constantly keeps things loaded in when it doesn't have to. Now, for me, I've been emulating these games, and I've been emulating games for ever since Metroid Dread, really. And because I emulate them, all right, I tend to have a different experience than obviously people who run them natively on the hardware. Now, I've found out that I'm actually running the game in a better state. I haven't dipped under 30 frames unless I look directly north, towards the landmass of the entire world. Now, of course, this probably means that when I'm lagging looking at the northern sections, it's probably loading in assets and textures and data that it doesn't have to. Because obviously, if you understand anything about game development, a lot of the ways these open world games run and optimize themselves with compromised hardware is that they do a lot of culling, they do a lot of intelligent zone management, so that you can constantly move around these massive open worlds, but the game is smart enough to just load whatever it needs around you, or whatever it is that you're perceiving, and ignore the things that your character or viewport aren't actually seeing, so that you can intelligently manage all the memory in the game. When you have memory leaks, obviously, this can manifest as if you're playing the game for 4 hours straight, and then after a while you slowly start to see the frame rate diminish, or the game outright crash. And the only way to fix that is to restart the entire process from zero. And that's one of the things that we've been seeing in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Now, generally, when I see this, I kind of feel bad for the game developers for one reason only. This is not just one game that they've released this year, this is the second game that they've released this year. Or within a year time frame. Because remember, Pokemon Legends Arceus did not release a long time ago. That was a very recent release. And I thought the whole thing about Pokemon Legends Arceus was to try something new, but also to stretch their wings with a newer engine, kind of work with creating these open zones with Pokemon fluttering around.
So this is actually a really great example of the frame rate issues. You can actually see as this one user is like opening up the actual camera. For some reason, there's some weird thing about loading going on. Like to take this snapshot, they're already above like the ground, and there's something being loaded. Like I don't know if those are clouds. I don't know if what we just saw was like the game completely breaking in the main city section, but there are some severe technical problems all around the board.
Now they actually have a full Pokemon game where you actually do explore an open goddamn world. And unfortunately, it's just not there. Now, again, I do blame the hardware a little bit simply because of how old it is. And again, it's why I emulate these games. It's not because I have some hatred for Nintendo. I buy the games, I rip them on an actual Switch, not this one, you can't hack this Switch. I hack the Switch, I back up my ROMs, I run them on an emulator. Simply because, again, the only reason I do that is so I can run them at 30 frames, at least their actual intended frame rate, and I increase the resolutions just so I can get a better experience for the game. Again, I have the hardware to do so, which is why I go that way. The portability for the Switch isn't really a make or break it for me. So again, that's one of the reasons why I go into it. My experience is a little bit different. But it really has shown me one thing, is that Game Freak is just not really trying about this. Game Freak is not putting in the actual effort in order to make this game worth it for its fans. And it's one of the most disgusting things that I've actually ever seen. To be real with you, the only way this is going to change Game Freak fans is if you maybe think of, stop buying and supporting these games day one if Game Freak isn't there trying to make your experience the best that it can be. I think it's insulting to the other development teams at Nintendo. Whether you're Monolith Soft, whether you're the teams developing the Legend of Zelda games like Tears of the Kingdom right now that's gonna come out, Whether you're the team that's working on, whether you're the team working on Metroid Prime 4, whenever that may come out, okay? Whatever generation that is, I'm sure I'm going to be collecting social security fucking checks before I play that game, but you get the idea, okay? Any team out there in Nintendo that's developing games is immediately overshadowed by Game Freak, overshadowed by the Pokemon Company because of their sheer size and what IP that they actually possess and work on. They literally have more money in multiple factors than all of these other divisions, yet consistently, time after time, they are the goddamn Madden of game development. They are the Madden for Nintendo. They have one of the most sought-after, beloved, nostalgia-baiting IPs. If nostalgia was a hoe, this hoe would be the most tapped under Nintendo properties. And yet, consistently, time after time, Game Freak has tried everything that they can to not put a single ounce of goddamn effort into this game franchise. I think it's a little wild, and honestly, I think Nintendo might need to go to Game Freak at some point, knock on the door, and just ask them what the fuck is going on. But at the end of the day, does it even actually matter, okay? Because if this game still breaks pre-order numbers and it still sells like hotcakes, and the Pokemon fan base is still just living in La La Land and ignoring it, do they really have a reason to change any of it? Look, I can laugh at this all I want, and I can, we can be outraged all we want that no effort is being put in, but this is not a new statement, okay? This is not the first time they've done this. We're not having a surprised Pikachu face. It's been like this since, like, the 3DS era, okay? Ever since they've truly dove into the Switch era with Sword and Shield, maybe that was one mistake we could expect, okay? They were going from, the 3DS to a home console? But nah, brother, you've had plenty of iterations. It's kind of hilarious how older games like Pokemon Let's Go have more soul and effort put into its presentation than Scarlet and Violet at this point. If you want things to change, Game Freak fans, Pokemon fans, then you're gonna have to boycott, and you're gonna have to not buy these games day one. You're gonna want to have to make sure that, Nintendo or Game Freak patches these things or sorts it out before the release. Because anytime you buy a game before, it's been updated or anything, guess what? They don't have to do shit to make it better at that point, okay? They don't have to worry about it at all. Once you've bought it, it's yours, baby. They don't care. And the way that Pokemon fan bases work is like literally they could keep doing this year after year for like a decade straight. I swear to God, the next game could look actually worse than this and be running on hardware that's like 2 times stronger than the Switch, and people would still find some way to justify that. The amount of copium being snorted by actual Pokemon fans that could defend this kind of performance on one of the newest games, on one of Nintendo's biggest IPs, is actually goddamn lethal. And I believe the CDC should look into it, because this kind of drug usage shouldn't actually be happening. But ladies and gentlemen, this is my whole thing on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I think in a lot of ways, the game actually is pretty good. It's just saddening that the actual technical stuff around it has never been sorted out by Game Freak. And if anything, it just feels like Nintendo keeps honestly slipping, or like Game Freak and Pokemon Company keep slipping downwards. I don't want to say Nintendo, because Nintendo has a lot of first-party companies that do all they can to actually produce some of the best games that they can for that system. I really wish they did something like PlayStation, where like they could have some of their best teams. Like I know Naughty Dog and Guerrilla Games and a lot of the top IPs, a lot of the top companies at Sony do help out some of the other companies whenever they need technical assistance for their video games. I really hope that Nintendo honestly gets Game Freak to start tapping into the other companies they have and at least make their mainline big game look better. If it's anything that defines a Nintendo console, it's the Pokemon games around it. Not anything else, it's the Pokemon games. I personally wish it would be Xenoblade, alright? Xenoblade Chronicles 3 should be like the premier Switch game, but that game is too niche for it to ever have anything. Pokemon is the poster child, and if that isn't a good looking poster child, it's just a bad news all around. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, wanted to talk about it. Yeah, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like it if you dislike it. I am out.